The missing guest room had always been little more than a whispered rumor in the small coastal town of Faith, a gentle mystery folded into the old wood and quiet corridors of the Blackthorn house. And tonight, as the moon drifted like a silent lantern above the Atlantic fog, I invite you to step into this story with me. This is Evelyn Blackwood, your guide from Midnight Murmurs Radio, welcoming you to a soothing bedtime story, a relaxing story, a soft sleep story wrapped in the calm glow of a guided sleep meditation. Let the mystery unfold slowly, like a forgotten door opening on its own. Before we wander further into these shadowed halls, take a slow breath in. Let your body rest wherever you are, sinking into softness. Exhale gently, as though releasing the weight of the day into the quiet night air. Close your eyes, if you wish, letting the world beyond fade into the distance. Allow your shoulders to loosen, your hands to relax, your breath to steady into a calm rhythm. You are safe here, wrapped in stillness, surrounded by the warm hush of a story spun just for you. With each breath, imagine yourself drifting deeper into an old, peaceful landscape where nothing can rush you, where nothing needs your attention except the gentle unfolding of this tale. Tonight, we travel to Blackthorn House, a place older than any map, standing where the sea wind sighs against cedar shingles worn silver with time. The house seems calm at first, its windows glowing like soft candlelit eyes, its porch creaking in a slow, familiar rhythm. It has stood through autumn storms, through quiet Thanksgivings, through small-town parades, marching past on breezy Columbus days. It has held families, celebrations, regrets, and secrets especially. One secret that lives in the upper floor, behind a door that some claim once existed, and others swear was never there. You arrive at dusk, when the daylight is thinning to a pale gold that feels both alive and fading, the way memories sometimes do. Fallen leaves carpet the long, winding paths leading to the house, drifting in small spirals with every faint touch of wind. The distant lighthouse hums its low, steady call, a calming reminder of direction, even when the world feels uncertain. Everything is gentle, peaceful, unhurried. Inside the house, the air smells faintly of old pine, lavender sachets tucked into corners long ago, and a hint of salt carried in from the ocean. There is a warmth here, quiet, old-fashioned, comforting, like stepping into a memory you might have forgotten belonged to you. But beneath that warmth, there is something else, not threatening, not harsh, just a hum, an echo, like the soft vibration of a thought the house hasn't finished forming. The hallway stretches before you in calm dimness. Photographs line the walls, their sepia edges curling, their faces blurred slightly with age. You pause by one frame showing a family from nearly a century ago. A mother in a high-necked dress, a father with steady eyes, two children holding a small lantern between them, its light captured in the photo like a frozen flame. The brass plate below the frame reads, Blackthorn House, 1912, completed with 6 bedrooms, including the east guest room. But the east side of the house, it only has 5 rooms now, and no one seems to know why. As you move deeper into the hallway, your steps soften. The house seems to breathe in slow rhythms, wooden boards expanding and settling in gentle sighs. The shadows stretch long and relaxed, almost welcoming. A distant bell chimes from the shore, one soft note. Then another, as though time itself is walking beside you. There is a staircase ahead, its banister smooth from generations of hands. You run your fingers lightly along it, feeling grooves and warmth, as though the wood remembers every visitor who ever passed. The stairs hum under your weight, not loudly, but with the sound of age and story and patience. At the top of the stairs, the air cools slightly, carrying the scent of old books and tucked-away winter quilts. The corridor here is narrower, more intimate, with doors closed on either side, each painted in soft, muted tones. Blue, cream, forest green, and one door that makes you pause. A door that looks newer and smoother, less worn, as if it has been replaced or perhaps restored more recently than the rest. Yet strangely, it holds no knob, no hinges, no keyhole. Just a faint outline, like the ghost of a doorway that once was, or the memory of a room the house isn't sure it wants to reveal. You lean closer. The wood is cool. The air, before it's still. For a moment, you imagine the house tilting its attention toward you, curious, gentle, ancient dot. And somewhere behind that faint outline of a door, a soft sound echoes, a quiet shuffle. Like fabric brushing against the floor, like someone moving inside a room that isn't supposed to exist. But the moment you breathe in to listen closer, the sound fades, like a sigh dissolving into the walls. For now, let the mystery rest. Let your breath settle deeper. Let the calm of the house wash over you like soft moonlight across still water. As the story fades, allow yourself to drift into a peaceful sleep. The house settles behind you like an old friend adjusting its weight, the wooden beams releasing a long, low sigh that drifts down the corridor. You stand before the faint outline of the missing door, your breath slow and soft, as though the air here itself encourages silence. The hallway is dim, but not unfriendly. The amber glow of a single wall lamp spills out in a gentle halo, illuminating specks of dust that float like drifting snowflakes paused in mid. Everything feels suspended, lingering in a quiet moment that belongs only to you and the house. You take a step back, letting your gaze adjust, allowing the quiet rhythm of the home to guide you. The old floorboards creak softly, not in warning, but in recognition, as if they remember travelers who once wandered these halls, seeking rest, seeking answers, or perhaps seeking a room that no longer wishes to be found. The outlines of old photographs shimmer slightly under the lamplight, each one holding stories from lives lived long before yours. Some smiles seem warm, others distant, and a few appear almost guarded, as though knowing something was missing even then. You continue walking down the corridor, leaving behind the silent imprint of that hidden doorway. A soft draft brushes your face, cool and light, carrying with it the faint scent of cedar and autumn leaves. The wind outside has begun to rise, its gentle voice humming along the siding of the house. It sings a slow, wistful note, one that feels like longing more than warning. The windows tremble slightly, not enough to disturb the peace, but just enough to remind you that Blackthorn House stands on the edge of a restless ocean, where mysteries have always washed ashore like forgotten relics. At the end of the hallway, you reach a small reading nook carved into the architecture of the upper landing. A cushioned bench rests beneath a tall arched window, and moonlight spills across it in a broad, soothing beam. The cushion dips slightly beneath your weight when you sit, embracing you with its memory-softened fabric. Outside, the sea is invisible behind drifting fog, but you hear it breathing slow, steady, ancient. That rhythm blends with your own breath as you inhale deeply and release the air in a long, calming exhale. Everything around you seems too slow, as if time has decided to pause just long enough for you to settle into its quiet embrace. Your reflection in the window is faint, softened by the glow of the moon, but behind your own blurred outline, you notice something else. Not frightening, not intrusive, just a flicker of movement in the glass, like a figure shifting in a dimly lit room. You turn, expecting to see someone walking down the hall, but the corridor remains empty, undisturbed, except for the amber light still washing gently over the photographs and wallpaper. No footsteps, no whisper of fabric. Nothing but the familiar wooden hush of the old home. The flicker fades from the window, leaving only your softened reflection. Perhaps it was only a shadow from the swaying trees outside, or a trick of the moonlight bending through the fog. Still, your pulse remains steady, calm. Not startled. The presence, if there was one, felt gentle, curious, almost companion-like, as though someone unseen simply wished to sit near you for a moment, sharing the stillness. You rise from the bench and follow the hallway deeper into the east wing. The walls here narrow again, and the wallpaper shifts into a pale blue pattern of vines and lanterns, a design popular in the 1920s. The lantern motifs seem to glow faintly in the low light, as though echoing distant festivals' Latotum gatherings. Quiet Columbus Day parades, lantern-lit Halloween strolls through small-town streets. You imagine the house filled with those gentle celebrations long ago. Laughter drifting up the stairs, warm bread baking in the kitchen, soft music humming from a gramophone in the parlor. The past lingers in every corner of Blackthorn House, but it lingers gently, like a memory that wants to be remembered just enough, not fully, not painfully, only in a way that shapes the air without stirring the shadows too deeply. You approach the end of the corridor, where an old wooden door stands slightly ajar. The room beyond is dark, yet inviting, its soft darkness layered with the scent of aged paper and dust warmed by a century of summers. You push the door wider with a slow, careful motion. The hinges release a low murmur, a hum of acknowledgement. Then a creak and the room reveals itself like a slow exhale. Inside is a small study, the walls lined with bookshelves bowing gently under the weight of forgotten volumes. A single lamp, dusty but intact, sits upon a writing desk carved with delicate patterns of ivy. The air feels warmer here, as though this room has been waiting to be found. Papers lie scattered across the desk, their edges yellowed, their ink faded into sepia curves. A leather-bound journal rests open, a ribbon marking the final entry. You approach slowly, each step soft enough to merge with the stillness. You place one hand gently on the desk, feeling the grooves worn into the wood by years of steady writing. The journal's open page holds only a single sentence. The guest room is shifting again. The ink is old, but the feeling beneath the words is alive, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. A soft breath of air brushes against your neck, not cold, just present, like someone standing behind you, listening with you, waiting with you. And then the room grows still again, welcoming you deeper into its quiet mystery. Asterisk, the journal remains open beneath your hand, the faded ink settling into the dim glow of the study like a whisper suspended in time. The guest room is shifting again. The words feel neither alarming nor hurried. They resonate instead with the slow, steady pulse of the house itself, as though Blackthorn House has always lived in quiet conversation with its own hidden spaces. You rest your fingers lightly. Letting your breath soften, the lamp beside you flickers faintly, not in distress but in a sleepy rhythm, as if nodding along with your thoughts. The soft halo of its light brushes across the bookshelves, revealing spines cracked with age, gold lettering dulled into warm amber tones. Dust particles drift lazily through the beam, floating like tiny lanterns suspended in the air. Everything here feels wrapped in a gentle hush, a stillness that welcomes your presence with an old, quiet familiarity. As you turn another page of the journal, the scent of aged leathery sasa, comforting, earthy aroma that blends with the house's own fragrance of pine and salt. Most of the earlier entries have faded into the soft blur of time, but a few remain legible. Notes about renovations, mentions of visitors arriving for long-forgotten autumn holidays, a quiet remark about the lighthouse keeper who stayed here during a fierce 1934 storm. And sprinkled between these ordinary recollections are the stranger notes, the ones written in a slower, heavier hand. The east wing feels lighter. Tonight, I heard footsteps in the empty room. The house shifted while I slept. The guest room breathed again. You absorb these lines without fear. They feel like the reflection of a gentle mystery rather than a soft echo of a home that has seen much, held much, and whispered more than it ever spoke aloud. Blackthorn House is ancient, but kindly so, its presence more like an old storyteller warming a fire than any restless spirit seeking to disturb. Whatever lingers here seems to move with patience, with care, as though mindful of your quiet steps. You close the journal softly and rest it back upon the desk. As your fingers leave the leather cover, a mild breeze stirs through the room, warm, carrying the faint scent of old paper and a hint of something floral. Perhaps lavender from another era's forgotten sachet. The draft feels purposeful, guiding you toward the farthest bookshelf. The floorboards beneath you release a soft, melodic sigh as you walk. each step blending into the rhythm of the house's breath. Something about this shelf feels different. The books arranged here are neater, their spines less frayed, as though handled with greater care. You trail your fingertips along them, one by one, feeling the soft wear of cloth covers and the subtle grooves of embossed titles. Then your finger pauses on a small wooden panel built into the side of the shelf. It is smoother than the surrounding wood, polished as though touched often. When you press it gently, the panel gives way with a soft click, releasing a breath of cooler air from a narrow compartment hidden behind it. Inside the compartment lies a folded map, its edges brittle, its colors faded to watercolor soft hues. When you unfold it carefully, the paper crackles under your touch, revealing the layout of Blackthorn House as it once was. 6 bedrooms on the east wing, a reading room, a sewing room, and the guest room labeled clearly along the corridor where you had walked earlier. Yet, in the house as it stands today, that room does not exist. Your finger traces the outline of the missing space. The map feels heavier than parchment should, as if holding a memory that has not rested in a long time. And then, faintly, as your breath melds with the quiet around you, you sense it again, the presence you felt earlier. A soft weight in the air, a gentle awareness near your shoulder, as though someone stands beside you, looking at the map with you. There is no coldness, no fear, only the feeling of a companion unseen, guiding, patient. The lamp flickers slightly, brightens, then steadies. The shadow of the map dances across the walls like a drifting veil. In that moment you feel the house lean in just a subtle shift, as though adjusting to your discovery. A board beneath your foot settles. The air thickens with calm expectancy, as though something within Blackthorn House is awakening, remembering itself piece by piece. You fold the map gently and place it on the desk beside the journal. When you step back, the temperature warms as if in approval. The presence, whatever it seems, to drift toward the doorway, inviting you to follow. The hallway beyond glows faintly, the amber light deepening into a softer golden hue. You walk slowly, allowing the peaceful rhythm of the home to surround you, letting each breath carry you deeper into its quiet stories and gentle secrets. As you reach the threshold of the study, you feel the faint brush of movement behind you, like the hem of a dress trailing after someone who has only half remembered the art of walking. A soft whisper of air grazes your shoulder, not a word, but a feeling. Follow. But Blackthorn House is never in a hurry, and neither are you. You breathe in slowly. Exhale even slower. The mystery lingers, waiting for you ahead in the dim corridor. As the story fades, allow yourself to drift into a peaceful sleep. Asterisk. You step back into the dim hallway, leaving the study behind as its warm lamplight slowly fades into a soft glow that lingers at your back. The corridor stretches ahead, narrow and calm, smelling faintly of old cedar, dried lavender, and the distant echo of the sea drifting through unseen cracks in the walls. The air feels different, now gentler, more aware, as though the house is adjusting its breathing to match your own. Each step merges into the soft hush of wooden boards that have carried generations across their surface, and the shadows cast by the amber lamps stretch in long, sleepy lines that guide you forward. You pause for a moment, letting your eyes settle on the wallpaper. Pale blue vines curling around lantern motifs, glowing faintly as if touched by some forgotten festival light. The patterns shimmer softly when the breeze moves through the corridor, creating the illusion that the vines are swaying, alive in the dimness. It feels as though the house is offering small fleeting invitations to understand its quiet secrets. As you walk, you sense that presence again. Just a few steps behind you, or perhaps beside you, it moves with a slow, unhurried grace, neither threatening nor intrusive. The sensation is gentle, reminiscent of standing near an old friend who doesn't need words to be understood. There is a warmth to it, a familiarity that reassures more than alarms. Whatever lingers in Blackthorn House seems to carry a longing, not for attention, but simply to be remembered. You reach another landing, where a tall grandfather clock stands against the wall. Its wooden frame glows with the same amber tone as the lamps, polished smooth by time. The face of the clock is clouded, its hands frozen at a moment that might have held meaning once 12 minutes past 3. You rest your fingertips against the glass, feeling a faint vibration beneath it, as though something deep inside the clock still ticks quietly, just beyond hearing. The soft hum merges with the steady rhythm of your breath, creating a calm pulse that steadies your thoughts. Beyond the clock, the hallway widens into a small sitting area. A round window overlooks the fog-wrapped coast, and through it you see only the faint shimmer of distant waves reflecting moonlight. A cushioned armchair sits nearby, its upholstery faded to a gentle slate blue shade. As you sink into it, the cushion gives beneath you with a long, welcoming sigh, as though remembering the countless evenings others have sat here, listening to the wind crawl softly along the house's exterior. The ocean outside is a muted, present, rhythmic, ancient. Its hush seems to rise through the floorboards and settle into your chest, blending with the steadying beat of your heart. You close your eyes briefly, inhaling deeply, letting the scent of the sea, pinewood, and aged fabric wash over you in waves of quiet comfort. Every part of this house, from the creaking beams to the distant murmurs hidden in the walls, feels like it is singing a slow lullaby meant only for those patient enough to listen. When you open your eyes, you noticed something new. On the small table beside the chair sits a silver-framed photograph. It wasn't there before. Or perhaps you simply didn't see it in the dimness. The frame is cool when you lift it, intricately carved with patterns of leaves and curling branches. Inside, the photograph shows the same family from the earlier portrait downstairs: the mother, the father, the children with their lantern. But in this picture, they stand in front of the east wing staircase, and behind them there is clearly a door, a real, solid, well-used door. The guest room. Your heart remains calm, your breath steady, but the image lingers in your mind like a newly remembered dream. The door in the photograph is weathered, its paint chipped in places as though touched by many hands over many years. A brass handle glints softly in the captured light. Curtains can be seen through a window on the right, billowing gently as though someone had just walked through the room. But upstairs, only an outline remains, You set the photograph back down. The presence near you shifts, warm and faint, as though the air itself exhales. A soft tap echoes behind you, one single, gentle sound, like knuckles brushing wood or a footfall too light to disturb dust. You turn slowly, and your gaze drifts down the hallway. The wallpaper along the far end seems different, not changed exactly, but thinner, more transparent, as though something beneath it is trying to return to its shape. A faint vertical line appears, then another, slowly forming the subtle geometry of a doorway. Not fully there, not fully gone, just hovering between the two states, shimmering softly in the golden lamplight. The air cools slightly, though it does not steal warmth from your skin. It merely shifts, like a breath taken before speaking. The sense of presence grows clearer, not closer, but more defined, as though someone unseen is finally gathering the courage to guide you further. You rise from the chair. The corridor waits. The guest room waits. And the house, old and patient, continues to breathe around you. The corridor stretches before you, like a quiet breath held in the lungs of the house. The faint outline of the forming door shimmering in a way that feels neither solid nor imagined. It is as though the house, in its own slow, ancient rhythm, is remembering itself, recalling a shape long forgotten. A room once filled with life and voices and lantern-lit evenings. The glow from the wall lamp deepens to a warm, honeyed gold, revealing the soft grain of the wood beneath the wallpaper, hinting at something just beyond the veil of time. You walk toward the shift in outline, each step cushioned by the hushed creak of floorboards sinking gently beneath your weight. The presence that has followed you through the halls moves with you, not pressing close, not drifting away, but holding a respectful distance, as though accompanying you through a memory that belongs to both of you and also to neither. There is no fear in that subtle companion, only a quiet longing, an old familiarity, like a forgotten melody humming just at the edge of hearing. As you approach, the air cools slightly, but the temperature is comforting, like entering a room where the curtains have been drawn against the summer sun. The wallpaper shifts, as though responding to your breath patterns of vines and lanterns stirring, bending, aligning themselves along the edges of the doorway. For a single moment, you see the lantern motifs flare softly, glowing like tiny firefly lights pressed into paper. Then the shimmer fades, leaving behind only the quiet pulse of the house. You lift your hand and hover your fingertips near the faint outline. The air just before it feels different, denser, humming with a subtle vibration. It tingles gently against your skin, not cold, but alive. When your fingers finally brush the surface, the wallpaper feels smooth, warmer than you expect, as though someone had touched it just moments before you. Then you hear it, a soft, delicate sound, like the faint shift of fabric, a quiet breath drawn in, a whisper of movement from the other side of the not dash quite dash door. It's the kind of sound you might hear when someone rises from a bed in the middle of the night and carefully avoids disturbing anyone else. Gentle, thoughtful, almost apologetic. The hairs on your arms lift not, from fear, but from the deep sense of sharing space with something that remembers being human. You lean closer, and the presence beside you warms slightly. It feels almost like someone laying a gentle hand on your shoulder, not touching, but offering comfort through its nerve. The house hums around you, the low timbre of its wooden body vibrating in a slow, soothing rhythm. It feels like a lullaby woven into the walls. You take a step back, allowing the house to breathe. The shifting doorway dims, again, returning to stillness, as though it is not yet ready to open, or perhaps waiting for something more. You continue down the hallway, guided by instinct rather than decision. The house leads you, shaping the path with soft drafts of air and subtle tugs of warmth. You pass another pair of framed photographs, their glass fogged with age. One shows the east wing from a different angle, a long corridor lined with 6 doors, each with a brass number plate. Room 4, Room 5, Room 6, then the guest room, marked not with a number, but with a small engraved plaque. Harbor Room. The name echoes through your mind. Harbor, safety, refuge, a place meant for travelers who needed rest. You walk farther. The corridor curves gently, like the inside of a seashell, guiding you toward a wider landing where a tall, arched window opens to the star-washed sky. Moonlight falls over the floor in pale, drifting patterns, tracing faint silver paths across the old wood. You step into the light and pause, letting the glow wrap around you like a shawl soaked in calm. The presence beside you shifts again, closer now, as though drawn toward the moonlight's soft reflection. Then, from somewhere deeper within the house, a low-thrum resonanza, sound like a distant heartbeat echoing through the beams and joists. It is slow, steady, grounding, the kind of sound that feels older than brick and wood, older even than the coastline outside. It pulses beneath your feet, gently vibrating the floorboards. The presence responds to it, warm and attentive, as though recognizing a familiar call. Your eyes drift upward to the ceiling, where small cracks in the plaster catch the moonlight, forming delicate branching shapes like pale winter branches. They seem to trace a pattern that mirrors the map you found earlier, the lines converging toward a space that should not exist, a space the house remembers even when the world does not. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the rhythm of the heartbeat below lull your breath into the same slow, peaceful cadence. When you open them, you feel the corridor behind you shift just a subtle ripple of air, a whisper of movement as, though the hidden door has rearranged itself again. There is no rush. The house is patient, and its secrets unfold only for those willing to listen gently. You turn away from the moonlit landing and let the hallway guide you once more. The guest room waits not with urgency, but with quiet intention, as though preparing itself for the moment you are ready to see it fully. The moonlit landing fades behind you as you walk deeper into the east wing, guided by the soft breathing of the house and the gentle presence that drifts steadily at your side. The corridor seems longer now, stretching, not in distance, but in memory, as though each step draws you across layers of time folded quietly over one another. Lamps along the walls, glow in warmer tones, their light thickening into a soft amber haze that blurs the edges of the hallway and slows your thoughts into a peaceful, drifting rhythm. The faint outline of the hidden doorway still lingers in your mind, but here, farther down the passage, the air carries a new quality, denser, richer, touched by an old sweetness, like dried apples or warm oak. The scent grows stronger as you pass a narrow archway leading into a small alcove you hadn't noticed before. The alcove holds a single chair upholstered in thick burgundy fabric, a crocheted blanket draped over the back. Beside it sits a wooden music box, its lid carved with delicate swirling shapes that resemble waves crashing against a rocky harbor. You kneel beside the box, running your fingertips along its edges. The wood is smooth, worn by years of gentle hands. When you lift the lid, a soft chime begins to play, a slow, lullaby-like melody, simple and repetitive, reminiscent of something a traveler might have heard while resting in a guest room long ago. The melody floats outward, merging with the warm hum of the house, and the air around you shivers softly. The presence beside you shifts, once more closer, now unmistakably attentive. You sense a warmth at your shoulder, a subtle weight of someone kneeling next to you. Not cold, not threatening, a gentle, grateful presence, as though someone is relieved that the melody still exists after all these years. You let the music play. It feels right to let the house remember. When the tune slows and the last notes fade into the corridor's quiet, a second sensation ripples through the air, a pull, gentle and steady, like a hand reaching for yours without force. You rise slowly and step back into the hallway, allowing the house to guide you. A soft glow begins to form farther down the corridor, not the lamplight. This is different. Pale, bluish-white, like the shimmer of moonlight on water. It outlines the faint suggestion of another doorway, but unlike before, the shape is clearer now, more deliberate, its frame emerging from beneath the wallpaper as though the wall is exhaling, revealing something it has held in for too long. You walk toward it. The presence follows, warm and focused, almost hopeful. As you approach, the wallpaper's pattern shifts, the vines curling away from the forming doorframe, as though bowing respectfully. The lantern motifs brighten momentarily, glowing like tiny stars before dimming back to their soft blue-gray print. A whisper of movement passes through the house, a long, slow creak that reverberates through beams and floorboards, not ominous, but deeply, anciently alive. You place your hand on the faint outline. This time, the surface is cool, not cold, but serene, like touching marble worn smooth by years of gentle care. The air vibrates beneath your palm. A soft click echoes inside the wall, then so faintly you almost miss it. A warm exhale of air drifts through a narrow seam. The door is there, not fully, not yet open, but present, waiting. You close your eyes, letting your breath match the slow rhythm of the house. Inhale gently, exhale even slower. Your fingers trace the invisible handle, and though you cannot feel its weight, you sense it, an old brass warmth, imprinted in memory if not in metal. A vision flickers behind your eyelids, not a clear image, but the feeling of one. Curtains gently swaying, footsteps pacing slowly, a bed with a quilted coverlet, a window overlooking the harbor, someone sitting at the edge of the bed, hands folded, waiting for a visitor who never arrived. The presence beside you shifts, and for a brief moment, a warmth brushes your hand light as a feather, a silent gratitude, or perhaps a plea, but the door remains closed, not denied, just not yet ready. You open your eyes as the glow fades, the outline dimming again into the wallpaper, but it does not disappear completely. A faint vertical line remains proof that the room is returning, piece by patient piece. You step back, letting the house settle. The corridor grows still again, breathing quietly around you. The presence lingers a moment longer, then withdraws with the gentlest sigh, like someone retreating a few steps, but staying near, watching, hoping. Blackthorn House has more to show you, but it reveals its truths the way ocean tides reveal lost things, slowly, softly, only when the listener is calm enough to hear. You turn to leave the east wing for now, your footsteps merging with the steady heartbeat of the old house. As the story fades, allow yourself to drift into a peaceful sleep. And if you've enjoyed this journey into the quiet mysteries of Blackthorn House, consider subscribing and supporting the channel so more bedtime tales can find their way to you. Asterisk. Snow drifted steadily across the darkened sky as Lena and Samuel followed the narrow mountain road toward Blackwood Inn. The storm had grown heavier by the time they reached the final turn, and the headlights of their car illuminated nothing but swirling white shadows. The inn appeared only when they were almost upon it, a tall structure of dark timber and old stone, standing quietly at the edge of the forest, as if it had been waiting for them. Inside, the warmth enveloped them immediately. The lobby smelled of pine wood and something faintly sweet, like lavender, that had soaked into the walls long ago. A fire burned gently in the hearth, its orange glow dancing across the floor. Beneath that soft light stood Hazel Blackwood, the innkeeper, her gentle eyes framed by silver hair tied back loosely. She welcomed them as though she already knew their names. "You made it just in time," she said, closing the door behind them as the wind howled outside. "The storm will only get worse from here." There was something comforting about her voice, steady, warm, almost musical. Yet Lena sensed something else beneath that warmth, a quiet watchfulness, as though Hazel was measuring the air around them, listening for something only she could hear. They followed her down a long hallway. The wooden floor creaked softly beneath their boots, and the walls were lined with old photographs of the inn over the year's winter gatherings, lantern-lit nights, and a few portraits of the Blackwood family from decades past. Some frames were dusty, others polished, but each image shared the same faint golden tint, as if the inn captured memories and kept them suspended in time. "This place is beautiful," Lena murmured. Hazel smiled in a way that didn't fully reach her eyes. "It's peaceful. Most nights. The choice of words lingered in Lena's mind like a cold draft. Dot. At the end of the hall was there. Room 7. Hazel opened the door and switched on a small lamp beside the bed. The room glowed softly in amber light. Wooden furniture, neatly folded quilts, and a single window overlooking the snowy path. It felt old, but cared for, lived in the gentlest way. Hazel placed the brass key on the bedside table. "If you need anything, I'll be awake for a while," she said. "But once the clock strikes midnight, I stay in my room. The halls get drafty." Again, a strange choice of words. Lena felt Samuel glance at her, but Hazel simply nodded, wished them a restful night, and closed the door behind her. For a few minutes, everything was still. The muffled roar of the storm, the soft hiss of the radiator, the gentle creak of old wood settling. Samuel dropped onto the bed with a sigh. "At least we're not out there in that blizzard." Lena walked to the window. Snowflakes pressed against the glass, melting slowly into thin streaks of water. Beyond the window, the inn's lantern flickered in the wind, casting long shadows across the snow-covered path. "Do you think Hazel seemed odd?" she asked softly. Samuel shrugged. "Probably just tired. Or curious. Running a place like this alone can't be easy." Maybe he was right. Yet Lena couldn't shake the feeling that Hazel had been choosing her words, carefully warning them without sounding like she was warning them. The first hour passed quietly. They unpacked, changed into warm clothes, shared a cup of hot tea they'd brought along. Samuel flipped through a book he found on the small shelf, while Lena traced the patterns of the old wallpaper with her eyes. Then, something faint, a sound from the hallway. Lena paused mid-sip. A footstep, soft, slow, measured, like someone pacing down the hallway outside their room. She lowered the cup. "Samuel? Did you hear that, eh?" Listened, holding his breath. Another step, then another. Steady, deliberate, and strangely rhythmic more. Like someone who walked these halls often, following a path they'd memorized long ago. Samuel stood and moved quietly to the door. "Probably another guest," he whispered. But the inn had seemed empty when they arrived. Too empty. Lena stepped beside him. The footsteps paused right outside their door. A moment of silence, so heavy it pressed against her ears. Not a single soft tap on the wood. Lena's blood ran cold. Knock again. Gentle, almost polite, Samuel whispered. "Should I open it?" Lena shook her head quickly. "Don't open." She didn't know why she felt that so strongly, only that the instinct was sharp and certain. The footsteps lingered outside for a few seconds more, then slowly walked away, down the hall, fading into nothing. Samuel exhaled. "This place is something else." Lena stared at the door long after the sound vanished, her skin tingling with the sensation of being watched. Blackwood Inn was no ordinary place. She felt it now deeply, unmistakably, and whatever walked its halls at night was not entirely of this world. The storm pressed harder against the old bones of Blackwood Inn as Lena and Samuel lay awake, listening to the last fading echoes of footsteps that no longer belonged to any living guest. The room felt smaller now, its warm amber glow dimming under the weight of silence that stretched like a thin sheet of ice. Lena tried to steady her breathing, reminding herself this was just an old building in a winter storm. But something deep inside whispered that what they had heard was neither the wind nor the groaning of old timber. Samuel rose again, passing softly, and Lena watched him move through the subdued light as though he were drifting in and out of some quiet dream. When the radiator hissed again, it sounded almost like a voice-an exhale, deliberate, patient. Lena turned her head toward the window. Snow was thick against the glass, swirling so densely it seemed the world outside had dissolved completely, replaced only by white. The lantern beyond the path flickered weakly, as though fighting against something unseen pressing in from the forest. She approached the window slowly, her breath warming the cold surface as she stared out at the indistinct haze. For a moment she thought she saw a shape near the tree line, a tall, narrow silhouette that didn't sway with the frozen branches, unmoving, observing. She blinked, but the figure was gone. Behind her, Samuel spoke quietly, his voice low and steady, as though not wanting to disturb whatever lingered outside their door. Lena, something's off about this place. She nodded, without turning away from the window. No. The clock on the bedside table clicked toward midnight. Each second, a soft tap that echoed through the room. Hazel's warning returned to her, curling like smoke through her thoughts. Once the clock strikes midnight, I stay in my room. The halls get drafty. Lena wasn't sure she wanted to understand what drafty meant here. As the final minute slipped away, the inn seemed to exhale. The floors settled, the lights dimmed slightly, and the shadows lengthened in slow, deliberate stretches across the walls. Then, softly, faintly, the hallway stirred again. Not footsteps. Not this time. Something lighter, a brushing sound like fabric trailing along the wooden planks. Lena stepped back from the door. Samuel, eyes tense, stood still as the sound moved down the corridor, slow, steady, purposeful. The brushing grew louder as it neared their room, accompanied by a faint scent drifting beneath the door. Something old-fashioned and floral, lavender, but heavier, as though steeped in memories and time. Lena felt her chest tightened. "Do you smell that?" she whispered. Samuel nodded. "It's the same scent from the lobby." The scent grew stronger still, and suddenly Lena realized it wasn't coming from under the door anymore. It was coming from behind them. She spun slowly, her gaze sweeping across the room. The lamp flickered twice. On the wooden dresser, the mirror trembled faintly, as though someone had brushed a hand along its edge. Samuel grabbed her wrist, gently, not frightened, but alert. The brushing sound moved again, this time across the inside of the room, though nothing visible stirred. Lena watched the surface of the quilt ripple, ever so slightly, as if the air itself was shifting in a slow, circular motion. Then another sound. A whisper, barely audible. A breath formed into a syllable. Room 7. Lena's skin prickled. The whisper was so faint she wasn't sure she'd truly heard it. Yet it carried the distinct impression of someone standing very close. Samuel whispered back, "Who's there?" There was no answer. Only the brushing sound again, drifting across the floor toward the far wall. Lena's gaze followed the invisible path until she noticed something she had somehow missed before. A door. Narrow. Painted the same color as the wall. Nearly invisible in the dim light. An old brass handle sat beneath a thin layer of dust. Was that always there? Celebrated? Samuel shook his head slowly. I don't think so. The brushing sound stopped directly in front of the hidden door, as though whatever presence had walked through the room now stood waiting behind it. The lavender scent thickened, deepening into something heavier, something nostalgic yet sorrowful. Lena felt her heartbeat slow, not with fear, but with an odd, hypnotic calm. She reached out, her fingers hovering just above the handle. For a moment, she felt warmth radiating from the metal, like a hand had just released it. But before she could touch it, the storm outside surged violently, shaking the window and rattling the walls. The lamp flickered again once, twice, 3 times, then steadied. The lavender faded. The room fell still. Samuel whispered, "Whatever that was, it wanted us to see this." Lena nodded slowly. The hidden door was no longer just part of the room. It was an invitation, and behind it lay the mystery of the missing guest room. Lena stood before the hidden door, her breath slow and shallow, as though the air itself had thickened around her. The narrow outline in the wall seemed to pulse softly in the dim lamplight, as if the wood were awakening from a long, silent sleep. Samuel remained beside her, his hand hovering just behind her shoulder, steady but reluctant, as though he sensed that whatever lay beyond this door belonged to another time entirely. The storm outside rumbled with a distant growl, shaking the old bones of the inn, and the window trembled with gusts of wind that sounded almost like voices chanting far away. Lena's fingers brushed the brass handle, still faintly warm, and the sensation sent a tremor through her arm. It felt like a touch, like someone's hand guiding hers gently, urging her not to turn away. She closed her eyes for a moment, inhaling the soft echo of lavender that still lingered in the room, mingling with the faint scent of aged wood and the quiet hum of the radiator. When she opened her eyes, she felt the steady rhythm of her heartbeat align with the soft crackle of the lamp. Slowly, she pressed her palm fully around the handle. The metal gave under her grip with surprising ease, and the latch clicked with a sound that felt too loud, too alive in the stillness. The door shifted inward. A thin line of darkness appeared, deep and velvety, swallowing the sliver of lamplight that grazed its surface. Lena pushed a little more, and the door opened into a narrow passage. Cold air drifted out, carrying with it the scent of forgotten things, dust, old paper, and something faintly metallic, like the echo of an untold story. Samuel leaned forward slightly, squinting into the dark. "This shouldn't be here," he whispered, and he was right. The architecture made no sense. The room they were in bordered the outside of the inn, and there should have been nothing but open air beyond the wall. Yet the passage stretched forward, impossibly, like a corridor folding space in on itself. Lena stepped inside without fully realizing she had moved. The darkness embraced her gently, the cold wrapping around her like a thin shawl. She heard Samuel follow, his footsteps soft, on the wooden floorboards that creaked under their weight. The door closed slowly behind them of its own accord, sealing them into a dim hallway lit only by a pale glow emanating from somewhere far ahead. The corridor felt strangely alive, as though every plank, Every nail, every breath of cold air carried a memory. Lena ran her fingers along the wall. The wood was smooth, warmer than expected, pulsing faintly beneath her touch like the slow heartbeat of some ancient creature. As they walked, faint sounds drifted toward them. A soft whispering, the distant clatter of a teacup, the low hum of voices caught in conversation, none of it distinct. None of it human in the present sense. It was more like echoes of life that had already passed. The glow ahead grew brighter, revealing the outline of a single door at the end of the corridor. Its surface was painted in a muted cream color, and a tarnished brass plate sat at its center. Lena leaned closer, squinting to read the engraved numbers. Room 9. She frowned. But Blackwood Inn only had 8 rooms. Hazel had told them earlier that the attic was closed and the basement unfinished. There was no room 9. Samuel whispered, "Lena, this is the missing guest room." The name settled between them like snow gathering on a silent path. Lena stepped forward, drawn toward the door as though some invisible thread tugged gently on her chest. The faint glow surrounding the frame flickered, casting soft ripples of light that shimmered like candle flame across the worn brass plate. She reached out, expecting the door to resist her, but instead it opened the moment her fingertips touched it, swinging inward with a slow, deliberate motion. Inside was a room frozen in time. A small wooden desk sat beneath a window covered in frost. A teacup rested on a saucer, half full, steam rising from it as though it had just been poured. A wool coat hung neatly on a chair. The bed was made, the quilt perfectly folded, but the room was empty, utterly, impossibly empty, yet filled with the unmistakable sense that someone had just been there a heartbeat ago. Lena stepped inside, her breath catching. The lavender scent returned, stronger now, more vibrant, thick with memory. Samuel remained in the doorway, his gaze sweeping the small room. "It's like someone left just now," he murmured. Lena nodded. She moved to the desk, fingertips grazing the edges. The wood was warm under her touch. A journal sat open on the surface, pages yellowed and ink slightly faded. But the last line of handwriting looked fresh, as though the writer's hand had lifted only moments ago. The words made her breath hitch. "If someone finds this room, know that I never meant to vanish. The inn remembers everything." And before Lena could process the meaning, the teacup on the desk trembled hoosed slightly, sending a single ripple across its surface. The missing guest room was not empty. Something still lingered here. Waiting, watching, remembering, asterisk. The teacup's faint ripple widened slowly, as though an unseen fingertip had traced its surface in a slow, deliberate circle. Lena froze. Her breath caught somewhere between her chest and throat, the warm lavender-scented air curling around her in a way that felt both protective and warning. Samuel stepped fully into the room now, unable to remain at the threshold any longer, his gaze darting between the trembling teacup and the half-written journal. The frost on the window shifted as if brushed by a gentle hand, forming thin, intricate lines that resembled the petals of a flower blooming in slow motion. The entire room seemed to inhale. A soft exhale followed, cold enough to brush across Lena's cheek, yet so gentle it felt like someone whispering a greeting. or a plea. She stepped closer to the journal, ignoring the way her fingertips tingled with electricity as she reached out. The handwriting, delicate and lupin, trailed off mid-sentence, as though the writer had been interrupted. Or taken. Samuel leaned beside her, reading the line again silently before murmuring, "The inn remembers everything." "What does that even mean?" Lena shook her head slowly, her voice barely a breath. "Maybe it's not just a building. Maybe it's like a keeper of stories." Samuel turned his gaze toward the neatly made bed. The quilter patchwork of blues and muted green shifted slightly as if the weight of someone sitting on its edge had just been lifted. He stepped toward it cautiously, each move slow, deliberate. The room responded with a soft creak from its floorboards, like an old sigh. Lena flipped the next page of the journal, but it was blank. So was the next. And next. Dozens of empty pages followed, untouched by ink, as if waiting for new memories to be added. At the very back, however, one loose sheet rested against the cover. She lifted it carefully. A sketch covered the page drawn in hurried strokes. It showed the hallway they had just walked through, but not as they saw it now. In the drawing, the corridor was filled with shadowy figures standing side by side, their outlines faint yet unmistakably human, each of them facing the hidden door, waiting. Samuel noticed her freeze and stepped beside her. "What is it?" Lena held the page toward him, her hand trembling. "Look. Como le sumo." His face paled slightly, though his voice remained steady. This can't be real." And yet everything in the room insisted it was. The lavender scent deepened again, richer now, carrying an undertone of old books and distant winter fires, like a memory unfolding. The window suddenly fogged over, the frost retracting and reforming into new shapes. Lena watched as delicate letters appeared, one by one, as though written by an invisible fingertip dragging across the cold glass. "Don't forget me." The words hovered there, fragile and sorrowful. Samuel exhaled shakily. Someone was trapped here, or lost, Lena whispered. Or maybe. She trailed off as a soft knocking began 3 gentle taps, not from the hallway, but from inside the room's wardrobe. The wooden door rattled faintly, not violently, but insistently, as though someone inside was too tired to knock harder. Samuel instinctively stepped between Lena and the wardrobe, though his hands trembled slightly. The knocking came again, this time slower, softer. Lena could feel that same inexplicable pull she had felt in the hallway, an unseen force drawing her toward the source of the sound. "Samuel. Samuel," she whispered. "I think someone is trying to tell us something." He swallowed, the sound of it loud in the quiet room. "Or trying to get out." The wardrobe door creaked, shifting inward a fraction of an inch, though no hand touched it. Cold air spilled out, carrying a faint metallic scent. Lena took a cautious step forward. The door opened a little more, revealing only darkness inside. She lifted her hand, hovering just above the edge of the door. A moment of absolute silence followed. Then another whisper. This one clearer. "Close. Right in front of her. Please. Please, the single word felt heavy with longing, with loneliness, with the years of being unhurt. Lena's heart pressed painfully against her ribs. She whispered back, barely audible. "We're here." The wardrobe door swung wide. Inside, instead of shelves, instead of hanging coats, was a narrow passageway descending into shadows, lit by a faint, flickering amber glow from somewhere far below. Samuel stared in disbelief. "This isn't possible." Lena felt a calm strange and deep settle over her. "Neither was the hallway," she murmured. The faint whisper drifted toward them again. Warmer now, almost relieved. "Find me." And without waiting for the storm above or the world outside to offer permission, Lena stepped into the darkness, the floorboards creaking softly beneath her feet, as though welcoming her into the next secret the inn had kept hidden for far too long. Samuel followed, the missing guest room closing silently behind them. The narrow passageway spiraled downward, its wooden steps groaning softly under Lena and Samuel's weight, as though each creak echoed some long-forgotten memory. The walls closed around them in a tight embrace, lined with old planks that felt warmer than they should have, pulsing faintly with every step they took, as if the inn's heartbeat resonated through the wood. The flickering amber glow ahead cast long, trembling shadows that danced along the curved stairwell, leading them deeper into the hidden belly of Blackwood Inn. Lena held the light of her phone in her palm, but strangely, its beam barely reached the walls, swallowed by the thick, velvet darkness that clung to the air. She lowered the device slowly, realizing the amber glow seemed more trustworthy here, like it belonged. Samuel remained close behind her, his breaths slow and measured, trying not to disturb the heavy silence that lay like a blanket over the descending path. The faint whisper they had followed earlier seemed distant now, not gone, but waiting, lingering just beyond reach, guiding them with a patient hand. As they descended further, the air grew cooler, carrying the scent of old cedar, faint lavender, and something else, an undercurrent of sorrow, like pages of a diary, long soaked in tears. Finally, the staircase leveled out into a small landing. A single lantern hung from a rusted hook in the low ceiling, its flame flickering steadily despite the absence of any wind. The light illuminated a narrow hallway lined with framed photographs of sepia-toned images of Blackwood Inn through the decades. But these photographs were different from the ones upstairs. Lena stepped closer to inspect the first one. The inn's lobby, decades younger, filled with guests dressed in 1920s attercoats, hats, long dresses. Their faces were clear, smiling, vibrant. She traced a fingertip along the glass, noticing a familiar figure near the hearth. Hazel Blackwood, but far younger, her hair dark, her posture lively. "Samuel," Lena whispered, "look at this." He studied the photograph, his eyes widening slightly. "This can't be right." "She'd have to be nearly a century old," Lena finished softly. They moved to the next photograph. This one was taken on a snowy night. Guests gathered outside under lantern light. Their expressions, though still smiling, held something strange, an emptiness in the eyes, a longing for something just beyond the frame. Beneath the picture, a small brass plaque read, "The Winter Guests." Lena felt her pulse slow as she stared at their faces. One woman in the center seemed to look directly at her, her eyes following Lena even as she leaned closer. "Lena." Samuel's voice softened. "Keep going." They walked deeper into the hallway, passing dozens more photographs, each representing a different Depression-era families. World War II soldiers returning, couples in 1960s attire, hikers from the 1980s. All smiling, all slightly faded dirt, all with that same eerie stillness in the pupils. And then they saw the last frame. This one was empty. No photograph inside. No glass, only a carved wooden border, ornate and cracked with age, where an image should have been. The wood behind it was burned, charred black as though fire had once touched only this single spot. Samuel exhaled slowly. "Why is this one empty?" Lena stepped closer. Something stirred behind the charred center of the frame. Not a movement, but a sensation, like heat rising from embers long buried. She raised her hand, but stopped short of touching it, feeling warmth radiate from the blackened wood. A soft whisper drifted through the hallway again. "This is where I was forgotten." The voice was clearer now, fragile yet desperate, close enough to feel like breath brushing the back of her neck. Lena turned slowly, scanning the hallway, but saw only the same amber light, the same cold walls, Samuel standing close beside her. She swallowed gently. "Who are you?" The lantern flickered sharply, as if reacting to the question. Down the hallway, a new sound emerged, a soft rustling, like someone shifting fabric or stepping lightly on old carpet. Lena and Samuel exchanged a look, then followed the noise. At the end of the hallway, a small wooden door waited, its paint peeling, its brass knob dull with age. Carved into its surface was a faint symbol, a circle, divided gently by a vertical line. Samuel frowned. "I've seen that symbol somewhere." Lena nodded slowly. She had seen it too, on the last page of the journal from the missing guest room. The sketch, the shadowy figures. The symbol was drawn above them like a crest. The whisper returned, trembling with emotion, pulling them toward the door. "Please, find the truth." Lena pressed her palm to the door. It felt warm, alive. Slowly, it swung inward, revealing a small room lit by the same amber glow only. This light seemed to pulse with something deeper, something aching. In the center of the room stood a single rocking chair, and in that chair, a figure sat motionless, facing away from them, shoulders narrow, hair gently curled, a wool shawl wrapped around slender arms. The air grew cold around them, thick with anticipation. Samuel whispered, unable to look away, "Lena, someone's waiting." And as the rocking chair shifted ever so slightly, the lantern's flame bowed inward, as though paying respect to whoever sat within the heart of the insole. The secret. Clara stood motionless at the lake's center, her breath whispering into the cold air as the mist coiled slowly around her like a living veil. The glowing light hovered inches above the frozen surface, pulsing faintly as though it were breathing. She felt an ache in her chest, a weight both familiar and foreign. like a memory that had been buried so deep it no longer belonged to her but still recognized her presence. The knock came again, soft yet resonant, echoing beneath the ice as though a grey chamber lay hidden below, its door waiting to open. Clara tightened her scarf, willing herself not to look away from the shimmering orb. It drifted closer, circling her once with quiet intelligence before settling before her at the exact height of her heart. She felt a warm vibration move through her ribs, a hum that made the hairs on her arms rise. "What do you want from me?" she whispered, though she wasn't sure the question was meant for the light or for whatever ancient presence stirred deep beneath the frozen lake. The glow brightened in response, and the humming grew louder, vibrating the ice below her feet. Thin lines of silver light branched outward beneath the frost, forming delicate patterns like the veins of a snowflake, intricate, symmetrical, impossibly precise. They spiraled around her boots, weaving a shape she faintly recognized from her grandmother's old winter tale book, the sigil of returning, the mark said to appear only when something long lost sought its way home. The stories had always seemed like harmless folklore meant to lull children to sleep during long northern nights, yet here it was, etched in light beneath her. Clara felt something pressing lightly at the edge of her thoughts, not intrusive, but passionate an invitation. The glow dipped, touching the ice where the sigil formed, and the frozen lake responded. A deep, resonant tone vibrated through her bones, gentle but commanding. The ripple she had seen earlier surged upward from the center of the lake, rising through the ice like a memory forcing its way into the present. The surface did not crack or break. Instead, it became translucent, revealing hints of shifting shapes beneath dark silhouettes moving with slow, dreamlike grace. Clara's heart hammered. She tried to step back, but her feet refused to move, as though the sigil held her in place, not as a prisoner, but as a witness. A single, shadowed form rose closer, its outline wavering like a candle flame under water. She expected fear to claw at her, but an inexplicable calm washed through her instead, softening the edges of her panic. The glow drifted down, touching the ice once more, and the shadow beneath resolved into something more distinct, a figure, human, tall, cloaked, features blurred by the shimmering frost. Clara blinked hard, but the image remained, as steady as the moon hanging above. The figure raised a hand, not quite touching the underside of the ice, but close enough that Clara swore she felt warmth blooming beneath her boots. She inhaled sharply. She knew this silhouette, or rather, she knew the shape of it from a story her grandmother told only once, in a moment of rare, fragile honesty. The tale of the Watcher of Black Hollow, the spirit bound to guide lost souls back to the place where their stories began. Clara had always assumed it was a myth invented to comfort frightened children, yet here it was, reaching for her across the fragile boundary between worlds. The glow lifted, aligning itself between Clara and the figure below, as though bridging the gap. The humming grew into a soft melody, gentle, ancient, almost lullaby-like. Clara's eyes burned unexpectedly, the kind of sting that comes with recognizing something you never realized you missed. The figure's outline sharpened for a moment, and Clara saw the faintest suggestion of a smile beneath the frost, warm enough to thaw the cold in her chest. A voice rose in all through sound, but through feeling brushing her thoughts like the first breath of spring. You found your way back. Clara's knees trembled. Back? To what? To whom? She opened her mouth to speak, but the glow pulsed sharply, as if urging silence. The ice beneath her flickered with light, the sigil tightening its patterns around her feet, and the world seemed to tilt in a slow, graceful arc. The mist swirled upward, wrapping her in a cocoon of pale silver, and the lake, the figure, the glow, all of it blurred into a single, gentle brightness. Clara's eyes closed. She felt neither fear nor confusion, only an overwhelming sense of being carried lifted into a place where the boundary between memory and dream melted away. The final thing she sensed before the light faded was the echo of the knock, one last time, grateful, final like a door, gently closing after years of waiting.